Change is a scary word. Just think about how you feel when you hear that your management is going to announce changes. The truth is that no matter how adventurous we think we are, deep down, we're all creatures of habit, and we love our routines. Resistance to change is a natural human reaction, and this is no less true for organizations. So how can you avoid that resistance if you're planning to launch an API program or to take your APIs to the next level and make them public? My name is Maria Garcia. I lead the strategy at Amadeus for developers. And today I want to tell you the story of how was our journey to foster an open API mindset at our company. And it is a journey that is full of changes. It is full of achievements and failures, and excitements and obstacles, and allies and challengers. But more than anything, it is a story about influencing people, because opening your APIs involves much more than technical challenges. It involves political, strategic, cultural issues that you must overcome to make sure that your organization fully embraces that change. And this story, like any story, begins on an ordinary day in an ordinary world. Because like in the Shire, life at corporations tends to be rather peaceful. Like they live immersed in their own corporate success mindset. They seek predictable growth. They trust their proven businesses. And while they do innovate, they tend to avoid unnecessary risks. And so this is me around 3 years ago in that peaceful world as I was working for Amadeus in Asia Pacific. That's when I got my call to adventure, which was to help define and launch an open API program. APIs were not new to us, and in fact, we had been exposing APIs to our partners successfully for over 2 decades. However, there was this growing feeling that we were missing out on opportunities by not opening our doors to other innovators out there. So I just packed my bags, I joined the innovation team in Madrid, and we started this project from scratch. And when you start an adventure like this, the first step is usually the hardest to take, because you feel you have this blank canvas right in front of you, and there are so many pictures you can paint on it that it's hard to know where to begin. We knew the why we wanted to do it, but we still needed to figure out the how. And so the first step was to perform a lot of research. We needed to understand what was the internal starting point, but also everything that was happening in the outside world. And I have to say that after all that research, we were feeling quite confident. Because I remember thinking, okay, so we have all the technology, we have the data, we have the skills, we have the knowledge. How hard can it be to make this public? And so we would walk into those first meetings and be like, folks, don't worry, we will have something up and running in 6 months. Well, soon I learned, I think the same way we all do, which is the hard way. Because we went to these meetings and we were setting our vision and our passion, and we were talking about all the great benefits that public APIs could bring to our organization, and yet half of the times we were met with the following reactions. Do any of these sentences sound familiar? And the thing is that these were arguments hard to answer to sometimes, because the truth is that our partner APIs were performing just fine. I mean, the business kept growing, and so for many stakeholders, there was not a clear evidence that we needed to take any unnecessary risks. So remember that estimation of 6 months? Well, it soon turned into a thrilling journey of around 2 years. Now, the other day, I came across an article explaining an interesting change management model called the 8-step process for leading change. And as I was reading it, I realized that even though we were not aware back then, we were actually living each one of these phases throughout our journey. So I wanted to share it with you today in case it can also help you manage change at your organizations. And the first steps, according to the model, is to create a sense of urgency. If you think about it, in all the good stories that we know, at the beginning, heroes refuse the call to adventure. At the beginning, there is fear and reluctance until something finally triggers that realization that there is a need for change. Well, with organizational change, it is really not that different. So by sharing our vision, we were able to find the first allies and the first internal advocates. But the question was, how can we get the rest of the organization on board? We needed to create this sense of urgency by explaining the risks of not doing anything and the missed opportunities. Because people will only move towards the unknown if they genuinely believe that the risks of standing still are greater than of moving forward. So we used all that research that we have performed to build a solid case that was based on data and facts. But the most powerful tool we found at this stage was actually storytelling, because facts appeal to our reason, but stories appeal to our emotions. And so for some time, we will start the presentations telling real stories about companies that had failed to innovate and eventually were disrupted. This is not because we wanted just to scare people, but because we wanted to raise awareness about the point that disruption can happen anytime, anywhere. And our first army of volunteers needed a coalition to guide them. So getting the endorsement of our top management was critical to success. In our case, it was mostly the heads of corporate strategy and R&D. The thing is that according to research, leadership support is actually the main enabler to innovation success. So if you're managing a project like this, just try to make sure that you get the buy-in at all necessary levels as soon as possible. And something that may seem quite obvious and is often discussed is that to be able to succeed, you need to have a clear vision that is aligned with your overall business objectives. Now, what it is not so often discussed, and is also very important, is that you need to make that vision tangible for other people. We came across this problem quite often, because if you think about it, APIs are something incredibly abstract. And so for many of our stakeholders, APIs will be like integration layers, ways to connect to our customers, but not products, and necessarily not something to place at the core of our innovation strategy. Something that you can do to make your APIs more tangible to your stakeholders, especially non-technical people, is to build some quick prototypes that showcase specific use cases of what you can achieve with the APIs. Something else that we did was to present real examples of successful applications that were built with public APIs from other companies, because this helped us say, look, this could be us behind the scenes, and we could be the ones powering these great solutions. But real change only happens when you get enough people working towards the same objective. So once we had our strategy, the approvals, and the budget, the next step was to get the first recruits. To set the right foundations, you need to make sure you find the right team with the right skills, but this is even more importantly, with the right mindset. Gartner presents this model of what they call bimodal organizations, where there are two different mindsets coexisting. So you have ninjas who are more agile and adaptable to change, and then you have the samurais who are more predictable, reliable, and they follow all the rules and the orders. So what kind of team do you think you need to run an open API program? Who thinks it's mostly ninjas? Can you raise hands? Okay, a few of you. Who thinks it's mostly samurais? A few people. Well, actually, this is a tricky question, because the truth is you need both. At the core, you will want ninjas who feel comfortable with the unknown and exploring new ideas. They will be your main agents of change. And so our first step was to build a team that had this kind of a startup mentality within our larger corporate culture. Now, if you want to achieve real change, your ninjas cannot work alone, because it is highly unlikely that you can get all the different areas of knowledge in a single team. And I'm thinking about experts on your backend, security, legal, and so on. So very soon you will need to find other allies, these reliable samurais, across all the different business units and corporate functions. And to find those allies, a good idea is to involve everyone from the very beginning. Also because, according to research, politics and lack of alignment are the main obstacles to innovation. Now, I'm not implying that your stakeholders look like this, but otherwise it seems quite an accurate situation. Also, chances are that if you're opening your APIs and they cut across many areas of the organization, you will, one way or another, impact many people's work. So to get their buy-in, it's important that you listen to them, that you understand their concerns, and that you find ways to deliver them value. So you can answer to the question, what's in it for me? Now, heroes have to face usually many different obstacles throughout their journey. And I'm sorry to say that probably your journey to opening APIs will just be the same. In our case, there were 4 main challenges that we had to face. The first one being the security risks. Because open APIs are one of those situations where with great power comes great responsibility. By opening APIs, if you don't manage it properly, you are exposing your company to potential external attacks. Also, if you think about it, developers are using your APIs to build their own solutions. So any problems in terms of performance or security will not only impact them, but also eventually their customers. So you have to make sure that you involve your experts on security and architecture from the very beginning. And the second and the third risk were data and business risks. I think the questions that we got more often were, what kind of data you're planning to open, how, and the one that people seem to be more concerned about, how are you going to make sure that this is not going to cannibalize our existing business? To mitigate these risks, we work with 2 centralized bodies. So they are composed of experts representing all the different business units and corporate functions. And they will review and validate A, the data that we are going to expose, and B, the API design itself. It's also important that you define a business model that is based on thorough analysis and that you invite the business units that are going to be impacted to be part of that process. And the fourth risk that was also part of the debates all the time were all the legal concerns, thinking about data privacy or potential misuse of our APIs. But actually, when we were thinking that these would be normal concerns, the challenge went beyond that. Because for the first time, we were exposing APIs to everyone. And even though we are used to handle legal contracts with large partners, now we needed to prepare a contract that could be understood by normal human beings with no army of lawyers behind them. So this also triggered some internal discussions that were quite interesting. Now, once we removed all these obstacles and we launched the program, we soon started to get the question that we were expecting from our stakeholders. Can you guess what it is? Well, it was, of course, where's the money? Right? Because ever since we were kids, we've learned that any successful adventure must end with some sort of treasure or reward. Now, the thing with open APIs is that the time to return on investment can be longer because you have to go through 2 different curves of growth. First, you need to reach a significant community of developers that will use your APIs for their solutions. Then a few of them will be successful, and their solutions, they need to reach their own customer base. Now, keeping this in mind, it's good that you kind of manage your stakeholders' expectations from the very beginning. You can also control the pitch. And instead of talking about return on investment, you can start talking about opportunities. Because the truth is that public APIs can deliver value to your organization in many different ways, including partnerships or improvements to your current products. And remember, always, to start communicating your success stories as early and as often as possible. This will help not only to prove the value of the program, but also to get even more internal support. And perhaps the most valuable lesson that I can share from our journey is do not attempt to achieve everything at once. The journey will likely be longer than what you expect, so it's important that you pick your battles wisely and that you take it one step at a time. It's always a good idea to start small. So pick just a few use cases, build a minimum viable product, and then taking it from there, you can keep learning, iterating, and adding on more capabilities. In our case, we started with a limited set of APIs that were low risk, were get-only, and this also helped to address the concerns of our stakeholders. Now, 1 year after launch, we have already seen thousands of applications built with the new APIs, and this has helped prove the value of the program, but also to address all those concerns and fears of potential risks. Taking it from there, we keep expanding the program. We have released the first post API that is fully public, and we are working on more cool ideas like artificial intelligence APIs or even exposing partner APIs via our portal. And of course, launching the public APIs marked a very important milestone for us because it helped prove that the coexistence of the private world and the open world was possible, and also that there were many benefits in trying to mastering both. Now, that said, our journey is far from being over, and there are still many more adventures to come. And also, you need to keep in mind that change, like real change, takes time. So it is likely that you will have to keep communicating and playing this role of the internal advocate for innovation well beyond the time frame of your API project. So as we have seen, your journey to opening your APIs is likely full of challenges. And so you have to be ready to make some mistakes and to embrace failure when necessary. Now, it is definitely an adventure worth taking because then you will be able to look back and to feel proud of everything that you have achieved, everything that you have learned, and all the internal changes that you have triggered. And believe me, there is nothing more exciting than seeing all the cool ideas that developers will come up with using your APIs. So in a nutshell, we've seen that change may sound scary, but change also means growth and means new opportunities. And there are many tools out there that can help you achieve it, like the ones that we have seen. So what's next? You just basically have to define your vision, as we have seen, find those first agents of change in your organization, because that will be critical, and start to remove those obstacles one by one so you can achieve your first quick wins. And remember that you're actually not alone, because there is a great community out there, like right here today, of people who have likely gone through the same challenges, so they can share great advice. In fact, we're still going through some of these challenges ourselves. So if you want to talk about it, I will be more than happy to do so. I will be around for the rest of the day, and otherwise you can reach out to me at any time. Thank you.